SCP-6373 Stage Blight. Classified by authority of the SCP Foundation Overseer Council. Level 3 Confidential. Containment Class Neutralized. Special Containment Procedures. The building containing SCP-6373 has been outfitted with a closed-circuit surveillance system and shuttered from public access. Assigned personnel are to view and transcribe SCP-6373's daily performances. Counseling is available as a part of post-viewing debriefing. Personnel are expected to be repulsed. Description: SCP-6373 is a collection of 4 papier-mâché puppets, each 1 meter in height. Chemical analysis indicates each puppet's exterior is constructed from non-anomalous material. All attempts to observe the interior of SCP-6373 through either physical or endoscopic means have failed. All instances are attached to an individual set of strings, bound together by a plastic cross-shaped mechanism intended for control by a puppeteer. SCP-6373 emits a strong rotting odor, causing visceral nausea. This response is entirely non-anomalous. At 6 p.m. daily, SCP-6373 will gain anomalous properties, primarily limited sentience, mobility, and intelligence. Attempts to interact with the objects outside of SCP-6373-events, see below, have failed. This effect will not occur if SCP-6373 are contained in a location other than the Gothard Theater, located in Reading, Pennsylvania. Instead, they will remain inert objects. SCP-6373 will then begin a rapid deterioration process, involving slowly melting their papier-mâché bodies and emitting a stronger, more intensive odor as a result. This process continues until SCP-6373 are placed within a 12-meter vicinity of the Gothard Theater. When conditions for animation are sufficient, SCP-6373 proceeds to the main stage of the theater to perform an act, classified as an SCP-6373-event. The details of this performance are fluid and ever-changing, and presently, no repeat performances have been observed. An audience of at least 1 individual must be present at the theater to observe the performance. Otherwise, SCP-6373 will undergo decomposition. SCP-6373 Event Summary and Cast. Overview. An SCP-6373 event is a largely unorganized and spontaneous performance acted out by SCP-6373, featuring unorthodox attempts at humor, storytelling, and entertainment. Audience attempts to interact with SCP-6373 during a performance have resulted in injury. Performances do not have a set length, ranging from 2 minutes to 3 weeks in length. Descriptions of each puppet's physical appearance and typical role in an SCP-6373- can be found below. SCP-6373-1 is an elderly male with a pointed nose and large eyes, clad in a beret, black sweater, and striped shirt. -1 is referred to as Pierre and serves as the performance's host and central character. SCP-6373-2 is a large, bold, disembodied head with sizable ears and an open-mouthed expression. SCP-6373-2 is referred to as glutton and is incapable of speaking outside a deep guttural moaning and single-word statements. SCP-6373-3 is a diminutive disembodied head with closed sunken eyes and a solemn expression. It is noticeably smaller than the others, and its skin is painted a discolored grey. While the puppet features no limbs, much like glutton, audiences have observed its strings being pulled during performances as if articulated joints were present. SCP-6373-3 is referred to as Am. Though Am does not typically speak or make noise, it will, on occasion, silently cry. Am is the most frequent target of Pierre's verbal and physical abuse. SCP-6373-4 is a long-necked clown wearing an outfit typical of such with white gloves. SCP-6373-4 is the only puppet with a hinged jaw, intended to be operated through the use of a string connected at the bottom of the mouth. This mechanism has since broken, rendering SCP-6373-4's jaw loose and uncontrollable. SCP-6373-4 is referred to as Jacques and serves as the group's comedic relief. Jacques often reiterates the phrase, "Isn't that funny?" to punctuate its antics. Addendum 6373.1 History and Performance Summaries. The Giffard Theatre was opened in Reading, Pennsylvania in 1860 by French immigrant and entrepreneur Timothée Giffard. The theatre was host to stage plays, musical performances, and in-house puppet shows that featured SCP-6373. The puppets were personally designed by Giffard, who maintained an intensive interest in puppeteering and often participated in the show's production. These shows were massively profitable and popular among Reading's children. It is unknown if SCP-6373 held any anomalous significance during the theatre's operation, but written evidence detailing payrolls of puppeteers and printed copies of scripts intended to be performed by SCP-6373 suggests they were ordinary puppets. In 1884, the theatre closed due to embezzlement committed by Giffard's wife, Cynthia Cordier. Cordier's actions were presumably in retaliation to Giffard's unfaithfulness in their marriage. This resulted in a divorce and subsequent legal battle, which Giffard lost. In 1886, Giffard wrote a letter to his wife, a portion of which has been transcribed below. "I write to you in poor health, and all joy sapped from my life. May misfortune follow you until the end of your days. I will not construct again that which I have spent 2 decades of my life working towards. I can only thank God's grace that the building has remained vacant, as I could not bear to see it owned by another man. I want to perform again and see the children smile. My happiness was so linked to theirs." 1 week later, Giffard disappeared. No evidence of his whereabouts was found. The letter remains his last known communication with another individual. Records indicate Cynthia Cordier would die of natural causes 4 months later. In 1887, the ASCI, American Secure Containment Initiative, a precursor organization to the Foundation responsible for investigation of anomalous affairs in the United States, discovered SCP-6373 during an inspection of the building. Anomalous effects were documented thereafter, and containment continued after the ASCI had been assimilated into the SCP Foundation. A log of notable SCP-6373 performances have been recorded below. Performance Summary. October 22nd, 1887. First recorded performance. Lighting fixtures around the theatre collectively power on several minutes before the show, and a slight piano accompaniment originating from an unknown source is heard throughout the event. Pierre rescues a princess, a costumed Jacques, from a dragon, played by Glouton. Researchers note several moments when an SCP-6373 instance has difficulty maintaining posture and moving, often taking multiple attempts to lift limbs. These moments increase in frequency over time. April 17th, 1895. Pierre and the other puppets take the roles of criminals recovering after a botched bank robbery attempt. As they attempt to figure out who alerted the police to their activities, they come to the conclusion that it was Am. The puppets spend the rest of the performance using the spherical Am as a ball in a game of soccer. It eventually devolves into a contest to see which puppet can kick Am the hardest. Pierre berates Am for betraying its trust and breaking the bond they had shared after years of working together. Examination of liquid secreted by Am puppet indicates chemical similarity to human tears. February 29th, 1916. The puppets reenact a scene on a farm, while the German-Russian conflict known as the Battle of Tannenberg is waged nearby. Glouton and Jacques take the role of a German and Russian soldier, respectively, and act out a slapstick battle in a field. Sounds of war and human suffering are heard throughout. The subsequent scene, inside the farmhouse, features Pierre and Am as a husband and wife. Pierre laments that its crops have been destroyed due to the war and calls to Am for support. The puppet remains silent, even as Pierre's cries grow louder and more frantic as it shifts the blame of the crop's destruction from the war to Am itself. Pierre states that Am will never be let out again, presumably referring to the house. August 21st, 1922. SCP-6373 perform a similar narrative as the first recorded SCP-6373 event. Audiences note each puppet sounds discontented in its delivery of dialogue. Movements do not sync up with dialogue, and instances move in frantic bursts, hanging limp when not speaking. The ending, where Pierre escapes with Jacques while Glouton flees, is altered. Instead, Pierre directly attacks Glouton with a plastic sword while berating the puppet for being useless. Glouton acts as if it were dead, and Pierre comments on its acting, stating, "That isn't what being dead feels like." Future SCP-6373 events are noticeably more dissonant and aggressive in tone. November 4th, 1938. First direct audience acknowledgement by SCP-6373. Puppets engage in a comedic sketch involving dancing. Instances move in slow, jerky motions while dialogue is quickly paced. Pierre becomes frustrated that the other puppets are unable to synchronize themselves and suspects they are intentionally being uncooperative. Pierre brandishes a prop hose and sprays water at the puppets. This removes paint from their bodies. High-pitched feminine screams are heard throughout the theatre, with no discernible point of origin. Pierre turns to the audience and states, "It's always the same kids out there." Performance ends with Pierre hurling Am into the crowd after it attempted to roll off stage. From this point on, Pierre speaks to the audience while performing, usually to seek approval before berating another puppet. All paint was restored by the next event. Future performances frequently feature Pierre accusing other puppets of malfeasance and taking physical action as a result. January 11th, 1952. Pierre performs a piano duet with Jacques, who is unable to be quiet or still. Though Jacques apologizes, Pierre repeatedly slams the puppet's head into the piano, denting it. When Pierre is finished, viewers note Jacques' jaw has detached completely. Jacques' laughter turns into pained cries as the puppet takes damage. Within minutes, viscous yellow fluid begins to seep from Jacques as it fails to reattach its jaw. Audiences describe the liquor's odor as repugnant. Pierre retrieves Am and forces the puppet to sit in a puddle of the fluid. This event marks the beginning of a trend toward increasingly violent behavior. While puppets suggest heavy damage as a result, they begin each performance fully restored. Notably, Jacques' jaw is never fixed, and the fluid continues to seep from the puppet. March 30th, 1958. Shortest performance, 2 minutes in duration. Pierre is teaching an art class, where each puppet is painting on a canvas. Glouton's canvas displays the words, "Open inside." When Pierre sees this, it becomes infuriated and ends the event, leading the puppets off stage. SCP-6373 instances disappear and are unable to be located. For the next 24 hours, an unidentified male voice swears and screams from behind the stage's curtain, punctuated by bouts of loud banging and clattering. The source is not discerned. Lights remain powered on and centered on the stage. SCP-6373 re-emerged at 6 p.m. the following day for a routine performance. August 21st, 1963. Pierre takes the stage and berates the audience for attending. Pierre asks if the audience is aware that in death, a soul can still wither. Pierre's voice changes to that of a woman's and delivers a eulogy in memory of Timothée Gaffard. Later investigation revealed that a funeral was not held for Gaffard. June 6th, 1971. Performance is routine, involving a sketch where Pierre teaches Jacques how to play baseball, using Am as a ball. Jacques is hesitant to hurt Am, but is pressured into doing so. All dialogue is delivered in a monotonous male voice as opposed to their ordinary intonations. There are frequent pauses and sighs in each puppet's delivery. This voice persists throughout all remaining SCP-6373 events. Movements during this performance are notably more loose and fluid than before. When an instance appears to have difficulty moving, it will strike itself, restoring fluid motion. January 13th, 1973. Puppets wear large papier-mâché facsimiles of human bodies and interact with each other in a sitcom household environment. Audience members report hearing a faint laugh track in the background, though one is not present in recordings of the event. Over time, the suits begin to decompose. Layers of papier-mâché slough off to reveal loose viscera. Pierre frequently assaults Am with various household objects, and at one point causes the puppet to split in two after breaking it open with the corner of a table. Pierre encourages its two sons, Glouton and Jacques, to belittle and berate Am throughout. Performance ends with Glouton pushing a cabinet of dinner plates on top of the half-destroyed Am. Examination of material left on stage following the event revealed it to be bovine in composition. Excess blood, fluid, and viscera remained on stage throughout later performances and began to rot. Removal was deemed impossible. July 2nd, 1976. SCP-6373 do not take the stage. Instead, the event is projected onto the stage's curtain by shadows. Their source is unknown. All puppets take part in insulting Am, claiming that it is responsible for their current situation, and it is the sole reason they are unable to move forward. Pierre pries Am's eyes open with a pair of pliers. Jacques spews fluid onto Am, causing the puppet to scream. Pierre forces Glouton to consume and regurgitate Am. Am is beaten with shovels, drilled holes into with a power tool, and squeezed by a vice to the point of breaking entirely. Event lasts 4 hours uninterrupted. During this process, the Pierre puppet emerges from behind the curtain and attempts an ordinary performance of Jack and the Beanstalk, while the shadows of Jacques and Glouton continue to beat Am. All researchers' attempts to open the Am puppet's eyelids have failed. September 18th, 1979. Puppets retell and reenact the story of Timothée Gaffard's life, framing him as an individual who was treated unfairly by society and his circumstances. Performance concludes with Pierre stating that Timothée Gaffard died alone, miserable, and never experiencing love. There is no mention of Cynthia Cordier throughout the performance. The puppet states that the Gaffard Theatre remains Timothée's lasting legacy and thanks the audience for their continued support. Pierre then flagellates itself to the point of knocking its head off its shoulders and releasing a mass of blowfly larvae from its neck. A feminine scream emerges from the hole. Larvae are unable to be removed from the stage, except when it is consumed by rats inhabiting the theatre. September 18th, 1979. SCP-6373 perform a retelling of Hansel and Gretel. All instances deteriorate considerably, seemingly without reason. Puppets have mobility issues throughout, sometimes repeating actions several times or falling to the ground. The performance is entirely silent until the final scene, when Pierre and Jacques toss a costumed Glouton into a mock oven. As the puppet burns, it states it cannot stay together anymore. All puppets collapse. Observation of the Gaffard Theatre later reveals that the structural integrity of the building is in jeopardy due to previously undiscovered infestations of termites and wood-decaying fungi in key construction areas. August 2nd, 1983. SCP-6373 instances hold a mock funeral for Am and spend the rest of the performance exploring various afterlives that the puppet may be delivered to, complete with props and costume. Puppets are notably culturally insensitive when discussing non-Western afterlives. Event concludes with Jacques commenting on the excess of punitive afterlives, and that it's impossible to truly know which a person should believe in to achieve salvation. Pierre then states, "It knows the answer. We're all dead. This is the only afterlife there is." Puppets then go limp and remain in this state for a week, missing 7 performances. All future performances lack props and costumes, marking a decline in performance effort by SCP-6373. March 18th, 1984. Pierre tells nonsensical jokes which Jacques and Glouton laugh excessively at. Pierre then goes on a tirade about wanting to injure members of the audience while performing, and then asks the crowd if they feel similar. Glouton admits that it fantasizes about wanting to break a child's arms, almost every second it's alive. Pierre then asks the audience for a volunteer to demonstrate breaking an arm. The performance is silent for 46 minutes before researcher Lang volunteers herself. Pierre snaps Lang's arm at the elbow, fracturing her ulna. The puppet cites her resemblance to "that cunt," as greatly increasing its enjoyment of the act. The performance ends. Lang is reassigned to a different anomaly following treatment. Future performances infrequently include SCP-6373 committing acts of violence towards a member of the audience. September 18th, 1984. Last performance with discernible dialogue. Event is composed entirely of Pierre stating the full name, birth, and expiration date of every patron of the Gaffard Theatre from its opening to present. Members of the audience are included in this routine. Throughout the act, Pierre's movements are awkward, and its speech is slow and slurred. Event concludes with Pierre looking to the ceiling, stating, "You carry on so well," before violently throwing itself across the stage multiple times. February 12th, 1985. Performances have degraded to frenzies of self-harm carried out by each puppet. Stage lighting is absent or flickers. Musical accompaniment is discordant and cacophonous. Instances self-mutilate, flagellate, and flay themselves through the use of the stage floor's friction, each other, or blunt force trauma. Screams range from high-pitched feminine voices to deep male ones. Occasional laughter is heard during male screams. April 25th, 1985. All puppets sit on the stage motionless, occasionally turning their heads to monologue to the audience in a nonsensical, indecipherable fashion. Several researchers claim the puppets were directly gazing at them. All future dialogue in performances consists solely of moaning, grunting, screaming, and weeping, with extended periods of inactivity. Physical actions are often limited to standing or sitting. May 13th, 1985. Performance is entirely indecipherable. June 9th, 1985. Final performance. SCP-6373 instances stand side by side for 18 minutes. No dialogue is heard. They collectively bow and fall to the ground. Stage lights and music cease. No further events occur. See addenda for details. Following the June 9th, 1985 performance, all SCP-6373 instances began the deterioration process observed prior, shedding their papier-mâché exteriors. When this was complete, each instance was discovered to contain preserved human remains and organs, which had been segmented cleanly at several termination points. All remains are presumably sourced from a single individual. Their contents have been listed below. Pierre contained a brain. Jacques contained a heart. Glouton contained a conglomerate mass of excess organs, an unbroken layer of epidermal skin tissue, fecal matter, and hair. Am was empty. Examination of unfolded skin tissue found within Gluton revealed a resemblance to POI 6373-2, Cynthia Cordier. Object has been reclassified as neutralized. End document.